everybody, and welcome to episode number 3 of Quarantine Cooking with Lou. For today's recipe, I'm going to show you how to make a Featherlight sponge. It's a good old-fashioned recipe that's been passed on to me from my grandmother down to my mum, and it is a pearler. Once you've nailed this recipe and you've worked out how to do it, you won't need to make or know any other cake recipes because everybody loves a sponge. And I'm just going to give you some nice little subtle tips and techniques to actually nail it and get it right. To make a sponge, you pretty much absolutely need a mixer with a whisk attachment. I wouldn't even bother looking at this video today if you don't have one. You'll need some fresh eggs, very fresh please, castor sugar, corn flour, custard powder, cream of tartar. You will need a sieve and some aluminium sponge tins, which are very light. You can't use heavy base tins for this recipe. You'll need a hand whisk, spatula, measuring cups and spoons. Going to crack these 4 eggs into the bowl, not separating yolks from egg yolks or anything like that, just straight in. Really important that your eggs are fresh. Non-fresh eggs will not rise very well, so very important. And also room temperature, not cold. And the next thing we're going to do is put in 3/4 cup of castor sugar. Measure that out each time so it's level. And we're going to put that in the mix master and mix that for 5 minutes on high speed. While that's mixing, we're going to measure out our dry ingredients and we're going to put these straight into the sifter or sieve. There's no point even really using a bowl for this one. So with this one we need to get 2/3 of a cup of corn flour, level cups. I'm sitting my sifter on top of baking powder.
Baking paper.
It doesn't go all over the table and it makes it easy to tip it back in to the sifter later. And then we're going to use 1/4 of a cup of custard powder. If you don't have access to custard powder or can't get it at the moment, you can substitute that amount with more corn flour. This is really about flavour because custard powder has quite a nice vanilla, eggy kind of flavour to it. Okay, then I always like to make a mistake when I'm filming, just it shows that how human I am and we all make mistakes. I forgot to mention the ingredient, which it will be on the recipe, don't worry, of bicarb soda. Apologies for that. So we actually need to add 1/2 teaspoon of bicarb soda. We also need to add 1 teaspoon of the cream of tartar. Level, please, measuring it all out as you go. Okay, now here's the important bit. We have to sift this 3 times. So I'm going to sift it. I've got 2 sheets of baking paper. The first lot I'll do onto one sheet. Then I'll do it a second time onto the other sheet of baking paper. I mean, you can use bowls for this, but I've actually found baking paper is much easier. It slides off each time a lot better. And then the third sift mixes everything well and makes it nice and light. Everything in sponge cakes needs to be super light and airy. That's the secret to it. That's now been 5 minutes in the mix master on high speed on the whisk attachment, and it's ready to add the dry ingredients. So what I like to do is one last sifter, hold my sifter over the bowl of the egg and sugar mix, and I tip in all those dry ingredients that we've sifted 3 times. And I do this so that I just am very gently sprinkling those dry ingredients over the mix so that I can stir it. Now I'm going to try and show you how you stir it. I don't use a spoon. I personally use a whisk. I've got a flat whisk, but you need to basically stir it very gently and lift it as you do it. I like using a hand whisk to do this because it's gentle and light, but it also tends to blend the dry ingredients into the egg mixture nicely. I find personally with a spoon that you have to then stir it too much, and then you're inadvertently going to stir out the air, which you don't want to do. Okay, so at this point I've stirred that enough with my whisk, and this is what I do again. Other people who make Featherlight sponges may do this differently, but I then get my spatula and do a bit of a lift to make sure I've got absolutely all the corn flour, etc. mixed in thoroughly. The second you see that there are no more lumps of dry, that's time to pour into your tins. Try to keep this as equal as you can. Do it very gently. You don't want to knock the air out of this mixture. I don't measure. You can if you want to measure them, the weight, to make sure they're even. It is important to keep them pretty even, but I sort of go visually for that myself. Up to you. If you want to be a bit more professional, then weigh them. So these tins, by the way, very special to me. They belong to my grandmother. They were passed on to me after she passed away. And these are the ones she used to make her sponges, and they are approximately 70 years old, I believe. So they're very vintage and they're beaten about, but they work beautifully. They're pretty even. So I'm going to now put them in my oven that's been preheated to 160 fan forced for... See you soon. Sponges have to be in the oven for 22 minutes. In my oven, that's pretty exact. You might have to adjust that according to your own oven by a minute or two, but really not much more. You can't even test them by putting a skewer in them. Sponges will deflate very quickly if the oven's open too soon when they're not ready. So look into your oven, and if you can see the sides of the cake starting to come away, it's pretty much ready. But it's really about 22, 23 minutes, give or take, 1 or so minutes. So keep an eye on it, okay? In preparation for your sponges to come out of the oven, just get ready a wire cake rack and a clean tea towel laid over the top of that rack. So here's my other top tip for making really good sponges. When they're in the oven, don't talk. You've got to be very quiet, otherwise they could deflate. Okay, that's been 22 minutes in the oven. I'm going to quickly show you what it looks like, and I'm going to pull it out of the oven. Straight out, which is why you have to line your tins, and don't leave them sitting on your bench top in the tins because they'll continue to heat and cook. Okay, let's hope we'll just peel the baking paper off nice and gently. Et voila, Gran's Featherlight sponge. Okay, here's a little tip for today while you're in quarantine. Something you didn't know about my baking episode today is that I wasn't actually wearing any pants. So the reason for that is less clothes means less washing, and less washing means less washing powder, and less washing powder means less trips to the shop, so you stay at home. Enjoy your sponges, everybody.